snowing like hell up here. No, Hermiston. Bob Levy's on the phone.
One.
Who does that?
He's going to start.
There. Thank you. Gonna write that. Maybe write that down for him. I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
We can write it. We're gonna write it down for you. He's gonna.
Meeting to order. Good morning. We are going to start with a request for a motion to appoint a temporary vice president to chair today's meeting, the role that I will serve in. And if I can entertain that motion.
So moved, and I hope that person would be you.
Second, are all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
It's none. Thank you. And I will actually serve in support of our president, who will not be with us today. I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Levy is on the phone. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm sitting in for Commissioner Kukro Comas, who is out of town. And I would ask that we could entertain a motion to approve a leave of absence for Commissioner Kukro Comas.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful.
Aye.
For Tom Chamberlain as well. He's out of town.
All right, can we also have a motion to approve a leave of absence for Commissioner Chamberlain?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right. Our next item is to call for a motion and second to approve the minutes of the regular commission meeting of January 9th.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And did I need a second?
Oh.
Got it.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to somebody who does this on a regular basis. We will ask Curtis to provide the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President Pro Tem. Really appreciate it. Would like to draw everyone's attention again to the just come off rotation safety champions for the month. Again, thanks to port employees who are really focusing on being safe, keeping their coworkers safe, and getting everyone home in a safer way, a better way, hopefully healthier way than when they arrived at work. Stan, I wonder if you'd do our safety message for the month, please.
You bet. My safety message today aims to heighten awareness to American Heart Month that is currently going on. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for both men and women. Every year, 1 in 4 deaths are caused by heart disease. And to prevent heart disease and increase awareness of its effects, the Port is proudly participating in American Heart Month. Everyone needs to know that you can make healthy changes to lower your risk of developing heart disease. Controlling and preventing risk factors is also important for people who already have the disease. And heart disease can often be prevented when people make informed choices to manage their health conditions. And to lower your risk, watch your weight, quit smoking and stay away from secondhand smoke, control your cholesterol and blood pressure. And if you drink alcohol, drink it in moderation. Get active and improve your fitness and eat a healthy diet. And just so we all know, we are making a difference here at the Port. Nearly 80% of our employees participate in tracked wellness program efforts, and greater than 55% of the employees take part in biometric screenings. We also have on-site fitness activities, which are enabled by with facilitators, equipment, bike storage, and shower facilities. In addition, all port facilities are equipped with automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, and there are 30 public use AEDs in PDX itself. The Port Fire Department offers CPR and AED training certification twice every month through the PDX Lifesavers program. With a 2-year certification period, nearly 50% of the workforce is certified in high-quality CPR and AED use. And just point out that also all of the executive team took CPR and AED training and are certified. We did that about a little over a month ago, I think it was. This benefits us at work, throughout PDX, and in our community. So make a difference in the community. Spread the word about strategies for preventing heart disease. encourage people to live heart-healthy lives, learn cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and how to use an AED. According to the slogan of the Heart Association, life is why. That's my message, Curtis.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Really appreciate the message and enjoyed the CPR course as well. We've just got top-notch folks across the way at the fire department who can teach other people on the port team about CPR and life-saving at work and in other parts of your life. So first at the airport, I want to first thank at the end of this vast snowpocalypse, want to thank the port operations team, administrative staff, security, really all parts of the port get together in these stated emergencies. And we really got ourselves ready last week for a big snow and ice event. And in the end, all of at least 1 or 2 inches that we had out here did not provide too much of a challenge. Was it more than that, Vince? You're giving me that 5-inch. Yes. Okay. 5 inches. Didn't feel like 5 inches. And my kids were thoroughly disappointed that they were unable to go sledding for the rest of the week. But really do want to thank everyone for putting that extra effort in. We also do things like put up staff at hotels so that they have access throughout that 24-hour period. It really puts strain on folks' personal lives. And so really appreciate everyone leaning in. We may still get a little snow this week, although it looks more like the moister version of precipitation. Second, just a brief announcement, another addition to air service, nonstop service to PDX. This from WestJet, Canadian airline, serving from its home base in Calgary, Alberta. The seasonal service will run April 29th through October 26th, beginning this year. Nice to have another line directly into our friends to the north. On the marine front, we met in January with the Industry Leader Committee around Terminal 6, essentially visiting back with them after the report that came out, believe it or not, a year ago now, and really updated them on the progress at T6. It's going well. The rail shuttle is going very well. We're really pushing on growth of the diverse business, including break bulk. I think I mentioned in January that we had some vessels bringing Vestas towers. Just more small steps to getting ourselves to sustainable out at T6. So really great news out there. We also hosted last week a reception with the steamship operators, really helping to build relationships with those important conduits to shipping lines at T6. And hats off to the dredge crew, Stan, to your team for last week completing their season that started last June. They went deep into the winter. Sort of as you're approaching December and January, it's starting to get bitter cold out there, and the team did just a great job. I'll note as well, really focused this year on safety, and I really appreciate them spending the time and energy to get it done right and get it done safely. From a metric perspective, the dredge pumped more than 3 million cubic yards of material, continuing our mission to help keep the Columbia River safe and navigable. 3 million is the magic number this month in my comments because we have about 3 million pounds of steel out at the E-Concourse extension. You'll note Dan sort of doing Dan Gilkison's doing his sort of yes. It looks great out there. We expect the structural steel to be complete by the middle of this month, so very shortly. It looks great. If you haven't had a chance to look off the north side, we get to see the team out there climbing on the top of these bars and the building, and essentially are now approaching the practice of topping out. As some of you may know, new buildings tend to have a ceremony around the topping out, the bar at the top. It turns out it's a practice traced to an ancient Scandinavian tradition to appease tree-dwelling spirits displaced by construction. So I don't know how recently tree-dwelling spirits were displaced out here, but we have done a bit of that appeasement through a bit of ceremony in early February this month. So really proud of the team out there, and continues to be on time and on schedule at $215 million. Finally, as I think Commissioner Chamberlain is realizing today, our next commission meeting will be held at the Hillsborough Civic Center. And as our team brings forward the Hillsborough Airport Master Plan update for adoption, it's a great opportunity for us to get out there, see some of our assets, but also meet with community partners. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. The master plan really worked on charting out. I think you all have seen it a couple times in its iterations these last couple years, but with the help of the community, really designing what the next 20 years is going to look out in Hillsborough. So mark your calendars for March 13th in Hillsborough. Mr. Vice President, those are my comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And I call for a motion and a second to approve the executive director's report.
moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you. All right, do we have anyone signed up for public comment? Okay, hearing none. I wanted to ask if any of the commissioners would like to have a presentation on any of the consent items. All right. Well, Dan, I'm going to call on you to introduce our,
Commissioner, you need to read the title of the consent item.
I do need, okay. 2019 Port of Portland Transportation Improvement Plan. Okay. And so I would call for a motion to approve the consent item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So noted. All right. Dan, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So agenda items 2 and 3 will be presented together. Approval of these two agenda items will allow issuances of bonds sufficient to pay for the full project costs of the parking additions and consolidated rental car facility, which we call PACR, as well as the remainder of design for the terminal core project and some smaller terminal and airfield refurbishment projects. The remainder of the terminal core design work was included in the approval of phase 1 of terminal core. The terminal core project will be funded through multiple bond issuances throughout its design and construction. In 2017, the Series 24 bonds were issued, and they paid for $17 million in design costs to take us to 10% design. The Series 25 bonds that are presented for approval today will fund the remainder of design for the full T-Core project. In what is anticipated to be around 2021, we'll be back to request approval of the first in a series of long-term bond issuances that will pay for the construction of the T-Core project. The PACR contractor is building a 6-story garage with a 4-story rental car center building next to it. These facilities will consist of 3 distinct uses: a public parking garage, a consolidated rental car garage, and office space on the 2nd through 4th floors of the rental car center building. Because of the 3 distinct uses, there are 3 distinct funding sources. Public parking is paid for using the Port Cost Center and Series 25 bond proceeds. The consolidated rental car garage and the first floor of the rental car center is paid for from the port's customer facility charge, or CFC. That's the $6 a day that consumers pay on a rental car, renting a rental car for up to 4 days. So that money, those CFC charges, will pay for the rental car center. The 2nd through 4th floors of the rental car center building will be paid for by the T-Core project in a future series of bonds, because it will house functions that will be displaced by the terminal core project. A lot of the mezzanine area over in the terminal will go away, and those offices will be relocated to the rental car center. So again, today we have 2 agenda items. The first requests approval to issue up to $300 million of Series 25 Portland International Airport revenue bonds. The second item requests 2 approvals. The first is a new customer facility charge master bond ordinance necessary to authorize the issuance of bonds backed by CFCs, again, those rental car charges. Secondly, we're asking for approval to issue up to $200 million of Portland International Airport CFC revenue bonds, Series 2019. The rental car concession lease and operating agreements approved by the Commission in November of last year also provide additional security for repayment of those bonds, because they establish that the rental car concessionaires will cover any shortfalls in revenue required to support the bonds through a mechanism in the agreement called contingent fee. Bond proceeds will also be used to fund required reserves, capitalize interest, repay outstanding commercial paper notes that you've approved issuances of over the last several months, and pay for the cost of the issuance of the bonds. Lisa Fideli, our Director of Capital Finance and Debt Management, is here today to present these items and request approval to enact the ordinances and allow the issuance of the bonds. Lisa?
Thank you, Dan. Good morning. As Dan, oops. Yeah, there we go. As Dan said, I'm here today to request approval of 3 ordinances that would approve the issuance of the Series 25 airport revenue bonds and the Series 2019 CFC revenue bonds. This presentation will be a little unusual because it covers 2 of the numbered agenda items. So I will go through the first item, pause for a public hearing and vote, and then continue on to the next item. Oops. It's not advanced for me, thank you. I will start with the Series 25 bonds, which is agenda item number 2. These bonds will fund the capital projects listed on the screen, which are both in the airline and port cost centers. Bond proceeds, available port cash, and federal grants will fully fund these projects. The largest projects are the 100% design of the terminal core and the public parking portion of Packer. These projects may look familiar as various contracts have been here for approval at Commission. Packer also includes the rental car facilities that will be paid for out of the 2019 CFC bonds. As shown, the issuance also includes funding for other improvements throughout the terminal complex. PDX is required to maintain a debt service coverage ratio of 1.3 times. This means airport revenues are 130% higher than debt service in any given year. Through fiscal year 2025, the debt service coverage ratio is expected to exceed 1.7 times in all years, so we should have strong coverage. Oh, I did it again. There we go. The proceeds of this issuance will not exceed $300 million. That money will fund these projects, repay the short-term commercial paper debt, and fund issuance costs and requirements. The bonds will be 30-year fixed-rate general airport revenue bonds. Debt service for the airline cost center projects will be repaid from revenues from the signatory airlines that serve PDX. Debt service for the public parking portion of Packer will be repaid out of revenues generated in the port cost center. These will be issued as subordinate lien bonds, or SLBs, on parity with the currently outstanding SLBs, despite the name that SLBs are the most senior lien bonds that the airport has. There are currently $616 million in SLBs outstanding and $120 million in PFC bonds outstanding. Today, we're requesting approval of this Series 25 ordinance. In March, we will obtain a credit rating from Standard & Poor's. If it is deemed to be advantageous, we might seek a credit rating from another rating agency at that time. And the plan is to price and close the bonds in the April to May timeframe. There are specific actions that need to take place to approve the ordinance, which are set forth in the resolutions of the written agenda item. I will pause now for the Commission to take the necessary actions.
Are there questions on the part of Commission?
Maybe, Mr. Director, maybe this is something you can answer. What's our current credit rating?
We're AA minus.
AA minus, and what's our current outstanding bond indebtedness?
That's the $616 million. And so the AA minus is on the SLBs, which the Series 25 will be, and we have $616 million. The PFC bonds we have $120 million outstanding, and that's rated a single A because that's a single revenue stream. So it's not as rated as high as all the airport
30-year as well?
Those were all issued as 30-year debt, and they've been amortized. So we have some that were issued a long time ago that are dropping off, and the port's issued throughout time. So we have everything from Series 18 outstanding through 24 right now.
And the construction that we're funding through the bonds is intended to carry our vision out to 2045. Is that correct? So and these are 30-year bonds. So we'll be looking at the next iteration. Beyond that, those are my questions, and I just wanted to look at one. What does it do to our outstanding indebtedness and credit risk? And I mean, obviously, it's needed capital. This is the right route to take to do it, and I'm fully supportive. Just wanted to understand what it does to the bigger picture when compiled with the current indebtedness.
And that's the debt service coverage numbers that I mentioned being above 1.7. That includes everything, including additional bonds that we would issue when we said we'd come back around 2021 to fund more terminal core. That's all included in there. So we look at the program comprehensively so that what we're building, we feel that we can afford.
Yeah, thank you.
We have $1.70 for every dollar of debt service that we so that's pretty strong. But I would just, Lisa, could you just make a comment too about that AA- rating and how that compares to other airports?
The AA- is very strong rating. We're one of very few large hub airports that are rated AA-, and so we're doing everything we can to maintain that rating by keeping sufficient reserves. The rating agencies look at days cash on hand as a key metric for them, and we have a plan in place to build those up to show that PDX is self-sufficient and is doing the right thing.
And which rating agency is this?
This is Standard & Poor's.
Okay. Ladies first.
Thank you. I just had a question on what assumptions were used to get to the 1.7 as far as the revenue. Did you have some growth?
We have the employment growth, I believe, at 2.3%, which is fairly conservative. PDX has beat that. The 2.3% is, when we look back at the 10 years, for example, from 2006 to 2016, that included the Great Recession, where we had 2 years of declining employments. One big year, I think it was negative 10%. And that the CAGR, the combined annual growth rate for that 10 years was 2.3%. So we feel that that's a conservative yet realistic forecast. It also matches what the FAA uses in the terminal area forecast for PDX. So we feel like we're being consistent. And so revenues are driven off of that employment number.
Okay, so it sounds pretty conservative. Thank you.
Welcome.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to enhance my understanding, we don't know the interest rates yet.
Correct.
Right. So what is the process through which that will be determined? When would that be known?
So when we go to sell the bonds in New York in that April timeframe, we know it on the day of sale. So we try to pick a week in which there's not a lot of economic news that might create volatility to give us the best chance. And we go in person so that they can look us in the eye and say, these are the best rates that we can get. And we try to get them to lower the rates as we get more bids on our bonds than we have bonds for. It's called being oversubscribed. And so, when we try to get them to lower it, saying there's enough demand that, we can pay less on these. And
you do have assumptions, right, around
yes,
the range.
I was going to. Well, and I was going, and for the assumptions for the interest rate, we look at current market and then 50.5% or 50 basis points over that as a projection for
And we
over
actually
today.
We've been pretty fortunate. The last time out, it all happens, the pricing within a week. The team goes out and goes to Boston and New York, ends up pricing on a Thursday, I think. Is
Wednesday
that right?
and Thursday.
Wednesday and
yeah.
Thursday. And we were oversubscribed last time.
By 10
which,
times.
Of course, 10 times. We're pretty popular because our class of bonds as an airport and relative to our peer group, as Dan mentioned, we have a pretty attractive product. Not wildly, but it fits, as you know, from the finance space, in our category of investment a pretty good bond. So
10
we're-
times would mean we had $2 billion in orders for $200 million in
Feel pretty
bonds.
good about it.
And there's somewhat of a scarcity value to PDX because we're not like SFO. I'm not out there every 6 months. And so you get a bite at us every 2 years.
So, I'm sorry, would it be LIBOR plus a spread?
It's tax exempt, so it's not LIBOR. It's set in the market based on what other tax exempt investments at that same credit rating look at. There's also indices that they can look at. And so that's how they set rates.
What do you anticipate the interest rate being? What's your range, your guess?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, last time we were at an all-in cost of just around 4%. Rates, even though the Fed has raised rates have not gone up because it's more of a supply and demand and a risk adverse type of a dynamic. So when the stock market's doing horrible, everyone wants to buy bonds, and so that'd be a good day to be in the market. So I don't really have a good. I can't remember what our 50 over market is. I'm sorry.
Good money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 5%, if that helps.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell, high subscription rates, given the volatility of the long-term market performance.
All right, if there are no other questions from commission,
I
I'm
had
sorry.
another
There are.
educational one. So, what's the report back then to us? Will we see this in upcoming minutes? Will it be closed out after you've?
Could we do it as part of the executive director's report, or I could come to
Sure.
task force,
Yeah,
whichever,
happy to.
however
Around
you'd like
pricing?
it.
Yes,
You
that'd
bet.
be
Yep.
great to know how
Absolutely.
it.
I'm happy to do
closed.
whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Why don't we can also send a note out and let you know how it turned out. Essentially, as you bond, you're creating, as you all approve these contracts, that's where that money's coming from, of course. But on the pricing, it's going to be April, we think.
I think April and close by May, so we'd probably be able to let you know.
Happy to let you
in
know
April.
in comments or via email, and we'll just update you on pricing. Probably a couple months from now.
If there's an advantage to the stock market taking a dip, let it be ours.
Okay.
It sometimes helps when tweets go out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too.
All right, other questions from commission? If not, we'll open the public hearing, and this is a public hearing on ordinance number 467B. And does any member of the public wish to be heard? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And Lisa, I would ask you to read the ordinance number 467B by title only.
Okay. Bear with me. An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale in one or more series of not more than $300 million aggregate principal amount of Portland International Airport revenue bonds to pay or reimburse the port for payment of the costs of constructing, renovating, acquiring, equipping, and installing improvements at the Portland International Airport, to pay principal and interest due with respect to commercial paper notes previously issued by the port to finance such improvements, to fund costs of issuing the bonds, including interest to accrue on all or a portion of the bonds, and to fund certain reserves, and for any other lawful purpose of the port, authorizing amendments to the port's airport revenue bond ordinance number 155 as amended, and airport revenue bond ordinance number 323 as amended, authorizing and providing for related matters and documents.
All right, thank you. I'd like to call for a motion and second for approval of the executive director's recommendations and enactment of ordinance 467B. Is
So
there any
moved.
further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for the motion and second.
Second.
Okay. Pam, I understand we need to call for a roll call.
Correct. Commissioners Alexander,
Aye?
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Saruda,
Aye.
and Young.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Lisa and I understand you are also going to walk us through the second agenda item as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. That concludes my presentation for agenda number 2. I'm now moving on to agenda item number 3. This requests approval to enact 2 ordinances that would allow for the issuance of the Series 2019 CFC revenue bonds. Shown here is the Packer facility. The rental car portion of the Packer building will be the lower 3 floors of the garage, and the first floor of this building to the left, the rental car center. First, I'd like to give you some background on the PDX CFC. The Commission enacted Ordinance Number 448 in December of 2013, enabling the Port to collect a CFC on rental car transactions to fund rental car-related projects and related programs and expenses. CFC collections began on January 15, 2014, and the rate since inception has been the $6 a day for a maximum of 4 days. Ordinance Number 448 allows the Executive Director to change the rate as needed. Through December 2018, the Port has collected $76 million in CFC revenue and has expended $63 million on a pay-as-you-go basis for the recently completed rental car quick turnaround facility and related program expenses. In order to secure the legal opinion needed to sell the CFC-backed bonds, in August 2017, the Port sought and received a judicial validation of Ordinance Number 448 and any CFC-backed bonds that the Port might issue. The first ordinance to be approved under this agenda item is Ordinance 461B, which is the new Master CFC Bond Ordinance. When the Port issues bonds backed by a particular revenue source, bondholders require the Port to make certain promises with respect to that revenue source. The Port makes these promises to bondholders by enacting a Master Bond Ordinance. The Port already has master bond ordinances for general airport revenues under Ordinances 155 and 323, and has a master bond ordinance for PFC revenues under Ordinance 395B, but does not have a master ordinance for CFC revenues. Under the new Master CFC Ordinance, the Port makes promises to bondholders regarding the CFC revenue as listed here to ensure repayment and capacity. The second ordinance to be approved under the agenda item is Ordinance Number 466B. Known as the Series 2019 CFC Bond Ordinance, it authorizes the first issuance of CFC bonds under the Master Bond Ordinance. It also pledges any receipts of contingent fee payments, as Dan mentioned, which would come from the rental car concessionaires as established under their leases, to the 2019 CFC bonds, in the event the Port determines that CFC revenue would be insufficient to pay debt service and meet the coverage requirements. Enactment of these 2 ordinances would allow for the issuance of the Series 2019 CFC revenue bonds and the funding of the rental car portion of Packer. The proceeds of this issuance will not exceed $200 million. That money will fund the cost of the rental car portion of Packer, repayment of commercial paper debt, and fund bond issuance costs and requirements. The bonds will again be 30-year fixed-rate CFC revenue bonds, and debt service will be repaid from the pledged revenues of the CFCs and any contingent fee payments. The issuance schedule for the 2019 bonds would be the same as the Series 25 bonds. In March, a rating on the CFC bonds will be sought from Standard & Poor's, who has rated both the Port's SLB and PFC bonds. The Port is planning to obtain a second rating for the CFC bonds from either Fitch or Moody's. I will be presenting 2 separate Executive Director recommendations for this agenda item. First, staff recommends that the Commission adopt the Executive Director's recommendation to approve the Master CFC Bond Ordinance.
All right. Are there any questions from Commission on this ordinance? Yes.
Yeah, I have one question. I think you mentioned the rental car agencies make up the shortfall if there's a shortfall. What happens to the excess if there's...
The excess if we have more money than needed to pay debt service? Mm-hmm. It goes to, there is a flow of funds where the CFCs flow through different funds and accounts established under the ordinance, and the bottom fund, kind of the bottom bucket of the waterfall, is called the surplus fund, and that can be used for any legal CFC purpose. So that can be used to, there's future CFC projects. For example, there's a project to do a new service site for the rental cars. That's where they maintain their cars and do heavy maintenance, and they receive car deliveries. So that would be kind of the savings account to pay for that project, because we plan on paying for that with cash.
Okay. So it's kind of contained to support
Yes,
that.
yes,
Okay.
and it can only be used for rental car related purposes.
Commissioner O'Halloran?
Thank you. So the rental car companies also have a sizable investment in this facility. Could you just
Well,
refresh my memory what that is?
the CFC is paying for all of it. It's interesting because the rental cars company will tell you that they're paying for it, but it's the fee charged to their customer that they collect on the behalf of the port that pays for it. So it's actually a pretty good deal for them. They'll pay when you approve their lease. You approved the payments that they make. I believe there's like a facility rent, and there's the concession fee, and there's different things that they pay for the privilege of using the facility. But the CFC is 100% paying for the facility itself.
So we all got to kind of leap at the same time to make it work.
They actually leaped, Commissioner O'Halloran. When did we approve the
Yeah, I recall that a couple commissioners ago, yeah.
November.
December? So it's all in the context of that 10-year commitment.
Yep.
that
So
they
we need both
are
these.
in.
We need both of these things to make it work. So the previously approved and then coupled with this. So
Yes, the reason I'm coming, I was waiting for the lease to go because I wanted that pledge. I wanted to be able to pledge the contingent fee payments. And so we needed them to have that agreed in their lease prior to us enacting our ordinance.
yeah, so the previously approved motion is really moot without this piece. I mean, we have to have both pieces to make the
correct.
facility
Correct.
effective. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from Commission? If none, Lisa, I would ask you to read ordinance number 461B by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of Portland International Airport customer facility charge revenue bonds in one or more series to finance and refinance costs of rental car facilities and other related projects at Portland International Airport, to fund reserves for the bonds, the rental car facilities, and other related projects, to capitalize all or a portion of the interest on the bonds during construction, to pay for costs of issuing the bonds and for other lawful purposes of the port, prescribing the limitations and the terms, conditions, security, and form of the bonds, and providing for and determining various matters in connection with the authorization, issuance, security, sale, payment, and delivery of the bonds.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I would call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's recommendation and enactment of ordinance number 461B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Does this have to
And
be
now
a
you're
roll
gonna
call
for a
vote?
roll call.
Correct.
Yeah.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Saruda, and Young.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lisa, I would now ask you to read ordinance number 466B by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale in one or more series of not more than $200 million aggregate principal amount of Portland International Airport customer facility charge revenue bonds to pay or reimburse the port for the payment of the costs of designing, constructing, equipping, and installing consolidated rental car facilities and related projects at the Portland International Airport, to pay principal and interest due with respect to commercial paper notes previously issued by the port in connection with such projects, to pay costs of issuing the bonds, including interest to accrue on all or a portion of the bonds, to fund certain reserves, and for any other lawful purpose of the port, supplementing ordinance number 323 as amended, and authorizing and providing for related matters and documents.
Thank you. And again, if there's no further discussion, I would call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's recommendation and enactment of ordinance 466B.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Our roll call?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Saruda, and Young.
Aye.
Great. Lisa, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Vice President, I just want to acknowledge Greg Blond, who is from the Orrick Law Firm that is our is our bond counsel. We've enjoyed a great relationship with his firm, and then we have several people from our team that are working on the bond deal. And just raise your hand if you're working on the bond deal. Kelly, right there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your work on this. Great. All right, Vince, I understand that you're going to introduce the next agenda item.
Yeah, the next 3 agenda items. Now that we have the money, we're going to go spend it. So the first one here is a rehab of Taxiway K. This is on the north side and really connects Concourse D and E. This is part of our normal asset maintenance and preservation for pavement. And so when we look at this, we looked at life cycle cost analysis, and you do asphalt, you do concrete. We're going to do a mix of it here, and I'll let Chris Edwards go through the detail.
All right. Thank you, Vince, and good morning.
Morning.
Today I'm requesting approval to award a construction contract to Tampany Incorporated for the Taxiway K project in the amount of a little over $15.7 million. This shows the overall Taxiway K project, which is located on our north airfield, and it entails asphalt mill and inlay, reconstruction in concrete and in asphalt. We got some storm drainage work, and we are also relocating the midfield checkpoint, which is actually being done under the terminal balancing project. This shows the overall project schedule. The item bolded on your left is the item before you today, and the construction of Taxiway K will be done by October of this year. Here's the overall budget and funding. Again, that contract that is before you today, the midfield checkpoint relocation. Electrical pre-purchase, those are for long lead items for our lighting, and port staff contracted services that covers items such as our inspection, management, testing, other things in that nature. Our contingency is 10%, which is appropriate given the complexity of the project. It is funded out of our airline cost center as well as the FAA, and our DBE goal is 12%, which the contractor indicated they would meet. Staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendation.
All right, are there any questions or comments from commission? All right, hearing none, I would call for a motion and a second for approval of the executive director's recommendation.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And we're on to your next item, Vince.
Yes, another asset preservation. This one here in the terminal restrooms. As you know, bathroom cleanliness is one of the most important things from our customer service ratings. And so it's hard for me to believe actually that some of these bathrooms in the terminal building have been there for 30 years. And it is time for them to be updated to the latest standards. So we're going to be going in and renovating some restrooms on concourses C, D, and E as part of this project, and really bringing them up to the new standards of fit and finish and design. And Robin McCaffrey is here to walk you through some of the details.
Hey, good morning. So this item requests approval to award a public improvement contract to J.R. Merritt, Inc. for the terminal restroom modernization project for just under $3 million. The restrooms that will be renovated are on upper concourses C and E and on lower concourse D. The work is the renovation. We've been able to, through the work, improve the operational efficiency of those areas and incorporate some universal design elements which dovetail really nicely with the input that we've received through the Access PDX community outreach program. Shown here is the schedule. The construction with approval today from you all would occur from roughly spring break of this year to spring break of next year. And it's long because we're trying to minimize impacts of closures at any given time in the terminal. The project budget is shown here, funded through the Airline Cost Center. The small business enterprise goal of 17.6% is above the 15.5% goal that was required when the project was advertised for bid. So we beat that goal. With that, staff requests approval of the item to award the public improvement contract to J.R. Merritt for roughly $3 million.
I do have a question. You mentioned getting some additional input from other stakeholder groups and sort of embedding universal design concepts in the work. Can you share some of the things that was sort of additional elements or features that we've been able to upgrade the facilities with?
Yeah, so it's really a range, and because it's a renovation, we've been able to do certain things in some spaces that we couldn't do in all of them. But some examples would be we've put changing stations in the men's rooms and the women's rooms. We have been able to incorporate, in some case, taking out a fixture, to incorporate a larger accessible stall that provides a little more space if somebody needs assistance in a wheelchair, for instance, beyond just what the minimum ADA, I'll call it, requirements would be. Yeah. We have, in some cases, removed a sink to instead spread them out and be able to put in paper towel and trash receptacles in between, because that helps somebody who doesn't need to necessarily go then and with their wet hands and try to get across the way and then come back. So it's little things that we've tried to think about. And also, I would say the relocation of the janitor access doors, because it helps the operational efficiency, means we don't have to close restrooms as often, which means somebody doesn't have to then go farther to try to find another restroom while that restroom is closed. And so the kinds of things that came through with the Access PDX were along those lines, and a higher level mobility as well. And we're trying to incorporate those.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner?
Just quick. Thank you very much. You said the project will include the customer or user feedback system. What is that? How does that work?
Yeah, so that is, you'll notice that was described. It's not part of the contract. It's not part of the action that you're approving today, but it was noted in the item as a separate portion of the project. That is in a pretty early stage. It's intended to be a hands-free feedback system of a form to be determined, but it could be text this number with your feedback on. And it could be, there's a spill in this restroom, it needs toilet paper, so a light isn't working, whatever kind of comments. The form of the system is still in the RFP stage, so we haven't tested anything yet, but that's the concept.
That's what I thought.
Commissioner, you've probably seen some of the, a green button or a red button or a yellow button or a smiley face or a frown. The idea of all these things is to try to help get the customers themselves to give you the feedback that allows you to react and modify behavior or get someone out there if it needs to be cleaned. And so we're working through what that best model is, and what sort of someone coming and pushing a button but having nothing happen is also not acceptable. So you really have to have it integrated into your maintenance system, into your operations. So we're trying to figure out how to do that in an intelligent way.
And the first step in that RFP is a pilot program. Right. So we can test that we're getting information that actually lets us be responsive.
Very futuristic. I hope it's not going to overwhelm.
So much you'll forget why you went in there in the first place.
I doubt that.
No comment.
Sorry.
I just have a comment that I'm thrilled you're putting changing tables in the men's area, because most of the time with my son and his wife, he's the one with two babies. One's got to go take one to the bathroom, and it's difficult when it's not set up that way. So, kudos.
Right. Any other questions from Commission? All right. Hearing none, I would ask that we receive a motion and a second for approval of the Executive Director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Great. All right. And Vince, I guess now you are going to introduce our final agenda item?
Yes, this is a contract amendment for Concourse E that is related to the terminal balancing project. Maybe we can just bring up the first slide, which probably has no, it doesn't have that. Okay. So just a reminder, right? Concourse E, you're seeing it as you drive up. All the steel's going up, but there's more work to be done there. So it's an 830-foot extension. We're relocating Southwest Airlines from the south side over to the north side. 6 new gates there. We've got new baggage makeup units, and we're going to relocate some airlines in the ticket lobby as well. So what this amendment is doing with Skanska is really helping to procure some of the ticket lobby relocation work in the bag handling systems. So this is the second amendment that we have with them, and I'll let Dan go through the detail and show you some of the pictures.
Good morning, and thanks, Vince. Through the past several commission presentations on this project, we've shown these wonderful renderings of what the space is going to look like inside. So today I'm happy to actually share real photos. This is a photo looking down the concourse at that same concession node. Progress is going really well. We've got structural steel. There's a view from across the street of the roof deck. The structure kind of taking shape, and it's nearly complete to the end on the right side of the page. The slab on metal deck on the concourse or end planing level was poured for gates E5 and E6 a couple weeks ago. They're getting ready to pour the node, the concessions node we saw the rendering of tomorrow. So we're just kind of marching from west to east with the project, and things are going really well. This is one of my favorite shots. It shows kind of the overall coordination required for something like this. You have Airport Way on the left side, thousands of cars a day. You have an active airline taxiway and vehicle service road on the right. In the far distance, we're working directly adjacent to United Gate E4. And in the foreground, just off the page, is an active aviation fuel station that we relocated as part of the project. So tremendous amount of coordination required. The structure for the roof, we actually had to coordinate delivery between the hours of 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. Over a period of a couple weeks, because those pieces were so long and they were crossing active airfield operations. So it just, something like this takes a lot of coordination, and the teams have done really well kind of keeping it moving. So some key stats. We're about 2 years in. We've spent roughly $84 million. The utility tunnel foundation structural slab has been poured. It's the first structured slab at PDX, so it's one of our first steps towards resiliency at the airport. As Curtis mentioned, the structural steel will be complete this month with the topping out ceremony. The curtain wall will start here in the next month or two. This summer, you'll see the apron concrete being poured. We're also working in the ticket lobby on relocation of United, Southwest, and the airlines there. Like Vince said, baggage makeup unit work is going to start here in the next month. From a small business perspective, happy to report after 2 years, we're meeting our goal of 20%. And for those of you that recall, the Workforce Partnership Agreement had some sub-goals within there, and we're also tracking and meeting those as well. So with all that, I'm here to request approval to amend public improvement contract with Skanska Building USA for the terminal balancing project in the amount of $23,665,000. This is a view. This was the map you're looking for. What terminal balance, or what PDX will look like once terminal balancing is complete. Currently, Southwest is down here on Concourse C. We are building this extension, and as part of the project, we'll be picking up their entire operation and relocating them to the new extension on the north side. This will help balance operations at the gates, in the ticket lobby, at the security checkpoints, and within the baggage handling system. So we go from a roughly 70-30 split from the south to the north to a 45-55, or depending on the numbers you use, 48 and 52% split. So it'll be balanced once we're done. Some of the moves in the ticket lobby, we're actually starting in the next month. We're going to relocate all the common use carriers from the area they currently live in on the north to what we call the south central area. That'll allow us to rebuild airline ticket office and ticket counters for United, move them, followed by the same thing for Southwest, airline ticket office and ticket counters. it's kind of just moving the dominoes. As Vince said, this is a 6-gate extension with hold rooms, concessions, restrooms, and operational spaces for airlines and concessionaires on the deplaning level. It also involves relocations within the ticket lobby, on the concourses, improvements to the baggage handling system with 2 new makeup units. This amendment also addresses funding, separately funded projects that were within or adjacent to the terminal balancing footprint. So we have chosen to deliver them with this contract. And these are all included in the workforce and small business participation goals. This is another view further down the concourse. Unfortunately, I don't have a construction photo because construction hasn't made it to that point yet. But in the next month or so, we should have something else to share. The schedule with today's commission item in red, it shows the long journey this project has been on since we rescoped and received AAAC approval in the fall of 2016. We started construction kind of early to mid 2017, and construction will be complete by mid 2020. The budget is as shown here. We're here to amend Skansky's contract, which will complete the construction portion of the contracting. I will note that since the project was rescoped 2.5 years ago, we have maintained this budget despite a myriad requests, changes, pushing, pulling. We've kept it locked in at $215 million. Finally, the view of the approach from Airport Way, and we're really looking forward to seeing this in the near future. Staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendation.
All right. Questions from commission?
I had a comment. I did want to comment on both this project and the previous two of good job that your teams are doing meeting those small business participation goals. This is really excellent progress, and the fact that all 3 came in like that. Well done.
I will say it's difficult in today's market to get participation kind of across the board, but our contractors done a really good job.
I think it reflects the rest of obviously the control and the diligence across the board with the project management. Really good job staying on budget and on time.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see the rest.
Any other questions or comments? We good? All right. Hearing none, I would call for a motion and a second for approval of the executive director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Wonderful. Opposed? None? All right. I think that concludes our agenda for the day, and if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.
Good job,
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you.
That's the hard part is when you're judging a public hearing.
You can't read anything.
Just to work. I actually got here on 600 million had whatever meeting they have before this normally.
The only people do that are in Beaver.
Yeah,